Mrs. Lisa, a 40-year-old woman, drove her luxurious black car to the cemetery where her daughter was buried. Her daughter had died in a car accident 2 years ago. She had been in the car with her father, who was driving under the influence of alcohol. The child died, and her husband was sent to prison, a sentence Mrs. Aziza herself had secured, as she was a brilliant lawyer. Her heart had grown cold, and the flower of life within her had withered, so much so that she couldn't forgive her husband. She began living devoid of emotions, like a robotic machine, constantly tense and irritable. Every Saturday, she would visit her beloved daughter's grave.
One day, while she was on her way to the cemetery to visit her daughter, her path was blocked by a flock of sheep. She grew furious, pressing down on her car horn until a small, thin boy appeared. His face was pale, and his hair covered half of it. He was holding a short stick and apologized to her, but she scolded him, yelling in his face, which turned even paler. He lowered his head as her car sped past, muttering, "Wicked woman." After parking her car in front of the cemetery, she got out, holding a white rose, and walked toward her daughter's grave. She planted the rose on the right side of the grave, then stood upright like a soldier mourning his dearest comrade. She called out to her daughter in the depths of her heart, wishing she could meet her once again. Suddenly, she noticed a child at one of the nearby graves, kneeling as if he were hiding something. When he stood up, she recognized him. It was the shepherd boy. He gazed at the grave for a few minutes before walking away, head down with heavy steps.
The incident sparked her curiosity about what the boy was hiding there. She decided to go and investigate. She crouched down at the spot where the boy had withdrawn his hand and saw a small hole. Hesitant to reach inside, she felt a twinge of fear. Gathering her courage, she pulled out a folded white paper. She thought to herself, "I have no right to open this letter." But curiosity got the better of her, and she soon found it open in her hands. Inside was a message, written in poor handwriting, but the words were clear.
To my dearest mother, it has been 2 years and 29 days since your passing, and I am writing you these letters. I had hoped things would change, that my stepmother's heart would soften, or that my father would see my suffering. But nothing has changed. The suffering grows every day. I am suffocating, Mother. I bathe daily in cold water, my skin scrubbed with a harsh brush used for washing clothes. But worse is the delight they take in punishing me each day. I've tried to escape many times, but they always find me and bring me back to hell. My body has turned pink, marked with green bruises. I sleep in the barn as punishment, and am sent to graze the sheep early without breakfast. I wake up in the night to steal a piece of bread, and while grazing, I grab a milking goat, lie beneath her, and have my breakfast like an animal. Life without you, Mother, is unbearable. Breathing feels hard. I am coming to you. Only 1 day is left, and this will all be over. With love, your son, John.
She couldn't hold back her emotions. Her hands began to tremble as she whispered, "Oh my God, he's going to kill himself." Her whole body shook as though an earthquake had struck her, awakening all her dormant feelings. She realized that she and the rest of humanity were heartless, soulless, selfish beings. She felt disgusted with herself for scolding him so harshly, knowing she had only added to his suffering. It felt as if the letter had been written directly to her.
She knelt down again and pulled out the remaining letters from the hole. They all described the boy's suffering and the horrific forms of abuse he endured. She deduced that he lived in one of the rural homes near the cemetery and had been writing to his mother for a month, seeking her help. He wrote that once the month ended, he would end his life to join her. Determined to save him, even if it meant taking him away by force, she decided to return the next day. He had mentioned that only 1 day remained, so she assumed he would come back tomorrow with letter number 30. This time, she changed her appearance. She wore a white, loose-fitting dress embroidered with flowers, and covered her head with a red scarf, trying to look kind and gentle, unlike the woman who had scolded him before. The next morning, she reached her daughter's grave and began talking to her about the boy's tragic situation. Suddenly, she spotted him in the distance. His slow, heavy steps reflected his utter despair. She thought of ways to approach him without frightening him. He walked over to his mother's grave, then sat on it, looking completely drained. She carefully moved from one grave to another until only a few meters separated them. When he finally settled on the grave, he took a small bottle of water out of his bag. Concerned, she wondered if it contained poison. He opened the bottle, staring at it, then looked up at his mother's name carved on the grave.
As she pondered what to do, she saw him start drinking. She ran toward him, calling his name. He stood up in shock and asked, "Who are you?" She told him she had come on behalf of his mother to save him. With joy in his eyes, he cried, "Mother!" before collapsing like a gentle lamb, fainting on the spot. She quickly took him to the hospital, where they flushed his stomach and saved his life. Afterward, she filed a case against his family, accusing them of the abuse he had suffered. The letters served as indisputable evidence of the torment he had endured, and the court ruled in her favor, granting her custody of him until he reached adulthood. Mrs. Liza became a different woman. She cherished her days as though she had been reborn. She forgave her husband and devoted herself to providing John with all the love, care, and attention he needed. He became a beautiful consolation for the loss of her daughter.
Sometimes, people think their problems are the biggest and most difficult, viewing life through a dark lens with no hope in sight. They feel like they are the only ones suffering in this world. They close all the doors around them and believe their problems signify the end of the world. However, when they open up and observe others, understanding the challenges they face, they realize that many people have even greater and more complicated issues. Strangely enough, they might even be capable of solving others' problems, but they remain isolated, refusing to let anyone enter the zone they've created for themselves. I believe everyone should break free from this self-made prison, connect with others, and try to help solve their issues. This step will bring a surge of positive energy, hope, happiness, and motivation to live life with better performance. What do you think? Share your perspective in the comments so we can all benefit. Your comment might inspire or help someone else.